Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. I'm so excited. I have an awesome guest and topic for you today. We are in November. I just want to remind you all, it's probably on the ad, but I did just start a Patreon. You can go to my website and click on the Patreon, or you can look for Karen Rontowski or Paranormal Karen at the Patreon. I'm so excited. I'm actually taping this in October, so I'm really excited because I haven't had to do the work yet. But hope to see you there. And today I am talking to Marie Spiroff. I said that correctly, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
I am a rock star. Hi, Marie. How are you today? I cracked my iPhone, right? I have this big crack in it, so I almost am like so disgusted to look at my phone. All right.
Is it
go ahead.
Protector, or is it the actual phone?
No, I took off the protector last time I did that, and like an idiot, I just kept dropping it. So now it's not only cracked, but it keeps cracking more every day. And my other phone is on the way, but they're backlogged. So, but it's like a big black line across the front. And if it feels a little like, I think that I did break something inside. So hopefully this is clear.
Well, fingers crossed.
It is. All I kept thinking is, the place you buy your iPhone is completely different from the place you go to get it fixed. Have you ever noticed that? Like the Apple store, people are singing.
Yes.
And then you got to go through a portal into a cave to a man who's got a cage behind him. It's all crazy. But
that is.
So Marie, tell me about, because we're going to get into this. I love this. You sent it to me, the 12 steps of spiritual alchemy.
Yes.
This is the perfect time for that, isn't it?
Yes. Thank you. And yeah, actually, that's the first time I've heard anybody, when we got on this call, was that the flow of that, the 12 steps of spiritual alchemy, because I hadn't even compounded those two together to make such a fluid sentence. So that is beautiful. Thank you for that. Credit goes totally to you on that realm.
I'll take it.
But I think that now, especially with awakening and the way the cycles are going and things like that, it's definitely a prominent time. And I'm sure that that's also why it's been, or I've been directed step by step as to break the stigma down and to bring it to the collective and to make it a proactive measure instead of a reactive measure.
I love this. Now, in a minute, we're going to start with, where you came from or where you started out. But I feel like, and again, folks, we're taping this in October. I feel it's so heavy right now. Like it's a fake universe. And I feel like I just saw somebody on TikTok talking about like the negative side of awakening. So I think this is perfect to sort of counteract that, because it is, don't you feel like we're all waiting for something, but we don't know what it is?
Yes, I do. And I think that there's been like predictions that something's supposed to happen this fall, and we're getting closer and closer to it. So it might be like that itch of, like kind of like pre-COVID and pre anything else that's hit that people have been able to kind of, predict or resonate with the Schumann resonancy or whatever it is. A lot of people use that.
And you know what? I know a little bit about that, but could you give us, anybody that doesn't know, a quick explanation of the Schumann resonance and why it's going bananas?
Absolutely not. I have no idea.
Awesome.
I know that there is a wonderful person in the AOD 2.0 that knows so much about it. Her name is Andrea, and she's fabulous with it. And she posts like the scales or the photos and stuff like that. But the last thing that I've heard was that spring, the resonancy around the earth jumped to the highest frequency that it ever has in human history. And it brought two dragons, and the dragons are circling the the Earth's atmosphere to balance the frequencies out. But that's about as much as I know. If it has to do with dragons, then I'm there. But the Schumann residency, I'm still tiptoeing around.
How could you say you didn't know? That was a great explanation. And if Andrea is listening, please call me or email me, and we'll get you on to talk about the Schumann resonance. Okay, so tell me how we're going to go backwards. Tell me your journey of how you ended up in the space you're in and what you do and all that. Give me the beginning.
Sure. Oh gosh. Well, when I was conceived, I was a high stress baby within the first 4 months. So like that auto programmed my brain to constantly be in fight or flight. I'm not, and this is just this life. I don't even know. We're not even going to touch on anything else or other timelines necessarily. So from that point on, life was like good until I hit like 10 years old. But I've always been like telepathic and clairvoyant. I've been multiple clairs, and I've always been able to read myself the future, like of what's going to happen with me, around me, things like that. But I actually endured a lot of family trauma, mental, emotional, psychological, things like that. And then later on in life, physical. So I ended up compounding a lot of traumas on and kind of didn't listen to my guides. Like during that quarantine period, that the earth was quarantined, I could still hear my guides. Like they told me when I was 16 that I was going to get caught shoplifting, and I did it anyways. Like things like that. But then I got into a situation where I was like fighting for my life, and they helped me get out of it. So it was like I listened, but I didn't listen. And then about 2012, I really started waking up. 2015 was whenever it just like catapulted me into a new realm, and I went into like this psychosis in January of 2016. And being like full on psychosis. I have since then transmuted complex PTSD. I went from a 58 to a 16 on the scale, so it's like almost non-existent. I've also worked on transmuting schizophrenic symptoms and multiple personality disorders, along with like 13 other diagnoses. Which everything comes down to the spirituality. Like it's amazing the things that I have been able to learn. But honestly, all of it really does come down to having the foundation. Obviously I fell into addiction, when I was 25. I was always a partier prior to that because I wanted to numb out from the traumas and that, but I didn't actually hit active addiction until I broke my shoulder. And then pain pills, and I went down the road from there. And then twin flame, I collided with him. We repelled each other. And then now we're actually back into a nice little holy communion, but that's been over the last like 5 years that it's taken to get there with us, but also with myself. It's a crazy, wild story about how the universe kept us apart so we could heal separately, so that way we could come back together. It has to do with federal prison incarceration.
Oh my God!
Like lots of crazy stuff that you really only look at maybe a Lifetime movie and a sci-fi movie put together.
Right. Well, you hit on two things there I want to unpack before we even I want to unpack two things, and you hit on one of I think it's becoming my new favorite topic. But the first thing, when you said you were born in, what did you call that? Kind of, you were born in trauma or born in?
Yeah. Fight or flight.
Okay. And what is that? In fact, hold on one second. I'm going to tell everyone this. Marie, would you be kind enough? Courage is standing by the door and he has to go to the bathroom. Would you mind if I pause this for 1 second? It took him out to go to the bathroom.
Go right ahead. I have one myself.
Okay, you're so kind. I'll make him go fast. I'll be right back. Folks, hold on. I'm going to pause this. Okay, everybody, before we even continue, I have to say Marie is like the most patient person between the 7,000 emails back and forth. And now, of course, Courage had to go out. So thank you. But I remember exactly where we were. Okay, so when you said you were born, was that because your mother was in trauma at that time, or was there drug addiction? Like what made that? Because that sounds really interesting to me. Not interesting, but being born in fight or flight.
Yes. When my mom found out that she was pregnant with me, my dad had a heart attack and was hospitalized for 4 months.
Oh, this makes so much sense to me because I have to tell you, I have a friend and he's a comedian and he is in fight or flight all the time, like to a crazy level. And he was born in Vietnam during the Vietnam War, and his parents, like, they had him and then he jumped on a boat and they were firing at the boat. Like, that's how he came into the world. So this makes so much sense to me. Wow, I didn't even know that. So that's my first question. Now, here's my second question, which is becoming one of my favorite strange topics, which is psychics and addiction, or psychics and escapism. It feels like it's way more common and a topic that I haven't heard a lot of people talk about. Do you think that being sort of, because I also think if you were born fight or flight, there's boundary issues. And I think boundary issues are sometimes why people are psychic. Their energy is going into other places. Do you think that lends itself to addiction?
Yes, I certainly do. I know that a huge part of it for me especially was my dad passed when I was 10. And after that, it really enhanced even more. And I was actually hearing my mom's thoughts about certain things that were going on that involved a lot of guilt and a lot of pain and things like that, that was kept from me, that hurt me. It was a lot of lies told, a lot of things like that. And I heard them all in my head. And I didn't know that they were her thoughts. I just thought that I was figuring this stuff out. And then not just that, but then I was taking on her emotions and then my stepdad's emotions and just all these different things that really weren't mine. And then again, when I was 15, my first suicide attempt was I got suspended from school for taking some pills and blacking out, and I got suspended for 2 weeks, and I felt so much shame. And so I took a bunch of pills, and it wasn't me that wanted to die. I hate to say this, but I felt my mom's shame towards me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that. I had no way to understand that. Now I called my uncle and told him what I'd done, and I went to the hospital and had my stomach pumped, but like, it's this like, I don't want to die, but I want to die. And I don't feel this way. Where are these thoughts coming from? How am I figuring this stuff out? Like, and all of it was just a rampage of deep, dark family secrets that had been kept from me and that, inflicted a lot of pain. And so I just wanted to numb out because I'm an empath that can hear people's thoughts and can see the future and has no idea how to handle any of it. And we were under that quarantine. And so I really, I had very little help. Like literally, like I could hear little things like, you're going to get caught shoplifting, or you're not grieving properly, just like little tidbits like that, or hold on, you're going to get out. Hold on, you're going to get out. But that was, it was basically me making all of the decisions with not a whole lot of direction.
Right. Well, you know what else? Not just telepathically hearing those thoughts, but if you are hearing those opinions at that age, that is traumatic enough. Never mind not knowing where they came from.
Yes.
I mean, this is where I feel like, and I don't know if you've ever heard that thing where like, I'm an indigo, I guess, and then it's crystal children, and then it's, star seeds, which I'm guessing you're a star seed. Are you a star seed?
No, I'm crystal.
Okay. Are you? It's very interesting because I feel like the indigo, like the indigos, we were supposed to break down that wall, and what the crystals are, as far as it keeps going, it is to sort of provide. You're providing guidance for people who may have gone through the same thing, and all those psychological, shall I say, labels they gave you, whether it was schizophrenia or this or that. I wonder if that label was wrong and you were just so like permeable psychically that they just kept trying to fit you into a box. Does that make any sense how I said that?
It definitely does. And I think most people have that experience. I've also been shown, like, because I could have been diagnosed on the autistic scale and the ADHD scale, and I was never received those diagnoses. So I was led to the understanding that everybody receives a certain diagnosis to separate and divide. It's like that fear modality of the religions. And it's the same concept with diagnoses, which is why when you look at the DSM-5, like PTSD encompasses everything. And I had PTSD from the moment my dad died, but it was undiagnosed back then. So everything encompasses under PTSD. So I think that every single person just has post-traumatic stress disorder, and their brain develops all these other things. I've done a lot of research in my healing, and it just shows, like, some people, yes, they're born with the imbalances, but a lot of imbalances are actually formed in the brain at very young ages. And so nobody knows that, because you can't tell when an imbalance is formed. So most imbalances are formed, therefore they can be extinguished as well.
And there's so much judgment from society in any way that you kind of know to hold that back. You know, you said something really interesting there, which is I get very nervous with labels, especially for kids, because that turns right away into medication. And also when people have a label, they consider it to be for life.
It becomes their identity. Like, even after my PTSD diagnosis and stuff like that, since it was so prominent and it was with the psychosis and everything, it became my identity for a good 2.5 years or so. Like, I was PTSD. Everything I did, it was because of the PTSD and trauma. It was, I was no longer
responsible.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And before that, it was addiction. It's like, how do we unearth ourselves from these labels and from these diagnoses to truly harness our authentic selves and let go of any label and just be like, I'm an infinite being and I'm only subject to what is in mind.
That was said so beautifully. You really should write a book. Are you writing a book? I don't see a book on your website.
Yeah, that is actually one of the things that I get to do in this life. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah.
It's a really great story for another time. Like, I promise you, it's wonderful.
I love it. And because I really do, I kind of feel like, it's why you came into the world with sort of this trauma and this stuff and turned it around. That's how I always think it should be. You came in with these issues so that you could be the solution. The other thing that's really weird about labels is people that aren't diagnosed are using them all the time. Everybody's like, I'm so ADHD. And I'm like, that sounds like an excuse.
Well, and I think it's because I think the excuse thing, the lack of accountability, but it's also the fact that, a lot of society truly doesn't understand how they even function, like how their minds work. Like, they hear a symptom. And I think truly, like I said, the separation is what it's about. And so it leads to something. It's some kind of paradigm that needs to be broken down, just like the rest of them. And I think that with the neurodivergence and everything else, and people stepping into their power and being able to transmute their health, like, I've done all of this holistically. I took an anti-anxiety for 2 weeks only because a shaman told me to, because they needed to light up the neuro pathways in my brain for the light workers to work and connect to calmness instead of high anxiety. Otherwise, like, everything I've done has been completely holistic, and I've had no medications or microdosing or anything like that. So I'm here to set an example that it is 100% Now, it's not the route for everybody, because it is a kind of there was a lot of psychological warfare. You know what I mean? It was very difficult. The first year I had 4 suicide attempts. The second year it took me a year to quit cutting myself, and then another year to not want to commit myself.
And
so it was intense.
Yes. And that there is sort of a do what you have to survive moment. And I talk to people all the time, especially severely depressed people that I read for. And I always say, you know what, if you're going to take an antidepressant, anti-anxiety, because they do work, make sure you have an expiration date, and it may move, but when someone settles in for life, I get nervous, because then it does change your chemistry.
Well, and you're really spot on there, because each medicine is technically only meant to be temporary, because eventually you have to up the dosage or switch because your body becomes immune to it. And no chemical is meant. I mean, we're spiritual beings. Everything that we need to grasp is really within us, or we seek, like, I always say it's a paradox, like especially with the 12 steps, we have like a sponsor or a guide that walks you through, because you're meant to seek outside of yourself to find inside of yourself, because we're all God, because we're all one in the end of the day. And I can't do it all by myself, because their experience is different. So they've done something a little bit differently or meditated differently, and that will relieve the blockage that I'm feeling. So it's the same concept with the medicines, like use them as you need them, and then, move on. Allow yourself the freedom to let them go, because that's another attachment that we get to, is that instant gratification and that quick fix.
Excellent. All right. So we're right at the break. When we come back, I want to talk about where the turn happened, where you sort of, we're not even close to what I was like excited to talk about, the 12 steps, but we're right. I want to come back and talk about the turn, like sort of when you made that holistic term and everything. So we'll be right back, folks. Hey, everybody. Just want to let you know my tarot class is on sale this weekend only until the 23rd or the 23rd. I believe it runs out at midnight. So that'll be 2 days. You can get half off when you go to karenrontowski.com and click on tarot. And then you're going to use the coupon code October, all capital letters October. Also, November 1st, I finally have a Patreon. I know I'm so far behind everyone else. It is a tarot and psychic development. So it's going to be some paranormal, but mostly tarot and psychic development. I'm going to be putting up classes myself that are tarot classes, and we're going to be doing meditations and psychic exercises, and there's going to be homework and all kinds of fun stuff. I'm also going to have guests come on and tell us about their process, how they do their thing. So November 1st, the first class will be out. November 4th, patreon.com/Rontowski. All right, my dear. So when did, I don't know if I want to call it woke or awakening. I don't know why dogs are barking. Ignore them, everyone. Maybe they're excited about the podcast like I am. When did you sort of make this turn into what we'll call the healing pivot?
Whenever my twin flame and I collided, the psychosis had begun, and then we collided. I looked into his eyes after about a month of knowing him, and all of a sudden, like, it was literally like my eyes went into a vortex through his eyes, down his spinal cord, down into the depths of his root chakra, and I saw me looking back up at me.
Okay, and hold that for 2 seconds, because I have two thoughts there. First of all, psychosis, you mean, can you explain what that is or how you define it?
Yes, psychosis was, I was hearing voices everywhere, like all different layers of voices. I was literally in psychosis. I was shutting down completely. I wasn't talking to anybody. The only thing that I would do was go sit in the basement and write in a journal and smoke cigarettes, because I smoked cigarettes then. And this was also whenever I was doing meth. Basically what it was these voices were making me go through my entire life story in my head.
Okay.
Over and over again as I was writing it out. So like traumas, everything. And I had to write it all in this journal. And then I could also hear everybody's thoughts all around me. Mm-hmm. And so, and on meth, everything's amplified. So I could even hear like Pete, Joe's my twin flame, and he'd be like down the road at the neighbor's house, and I could hear his conversation with someone else.
Well, and that's very interesting. And two things about that. I don't know anything about meth, but I will say this. This is very far out there. Cigarettes have a very healing quality. I don't smoke, but if anyone told me I had 6 months to live, that would be the first thing I would do, I would go.
Really?
I smoke in my dreams. I have dreams where I'm running away from someone, and I literally run into the old 7-Eleven, and I go behind the counter and I pull down the Virginia Slims and I light up, and then I continue running with my cigarette.
That's so interesting.
Isn't it? But I feel like, first of all, tobacco, clean tobacco, not what they're putting out there, has healing qualities, but also cigarettes keep people in their body. That's why people in trauma or it's no better way to make sure you're in your body than smoke in your lungs. But it has to be, as somebody said to me, that has to be a past life thing, because I don't desire it now, but I'm like, that was I think there's things in life that just we're drawn to or something. But back to you. I don't, it sounds like, especially, that's a exercise I give people working on their clairaudient, is to try and hear conversations that are taking place down the street. So that's very interesting.
Well, it all hit me like a giant anvil, like Wile E. Coyote, just getting like smashed into the ground through like probably 12 depths of hell. The person that I went through about 10 years of trauma and Stockholm syndrome, and I was held captive in a relationship. At one point, I was held at gunpoint and forced into it whenever I was 18 years old. And so all of that had happened. And I actually had seen the person that abused me and I was still in Stockholm syndrome. I didn't know that that's what I had been in all those years. And it kind of, between that, the meth, and meeting my twin flame, everything just ignited. And it was literally like set fire to my world. I had a lot of, I exchanged bodies with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know, like, all of these things just started happening to me, and I had no understanding of what was going on. And I was just trying to keep my shit together. And I was on the verge of homelessness. So I was like trying to make it work with my twin flame at the time, because otherwise I was going to be homeless. And he ended up dropping me off at the homeless shelter. And then after that, I was in a hotel, and I just had so many different things of psychosis. They made me believe I was pregnant. They gave my body all these pregnancy symptoms, and I couldn't get pregnant. All the doctors had told me, like, no pregnancy, endometriosis, all of those things. And so I knew I couldn't get pregnant, but like they blocked they took my memory away. They blocked my brain.
Okay. When you say they, it is, who would you say is the they?
All of the ones that are clairaudient. I channel a bunch of different beings, and I have no idea still where they all come from. My understanding is they're Lyran, they're Arcturian, they're Pleiadian, they're like all different, but I'm going to assume that this was directly my guide team.
Okay. In a good way. Okay. Because I was going to say that sounded like a bad way, but did they convince you were pregnant to stop drugs?
They've convinced me I was pregnant. I was actually already, since I was homeless, I wasn't getting high. They convinced me because I was binging and purging really bad.
Oh, okay. Okay. So this was sort of a deflection.
Yeah, the trauma had stacked on so bad. And then with the psychosis, I was compulsively binging and purging 3 times a night. No control, not understanding why I was doing it, nothing. Like my body was just in this like complete, my mind, my body, everything was out of my control completely.
Okay. And I'm going to insert this here because people might be listening to this, or if you just turned on this podcast and you might be like, wow, this lady's all over the place and she's kind of crazy and blah, blah, blah. But I want to narrow this down and say, I feel like you are an incredibly psychic, in tune person that had no foundation. In other words, if you had been born into a family that had processed this. And this is where I hope we're going, folks. If you had been born into a family that was psychic or knew a little bit about this and you could have been guided, this would have been completely different. Am I right?
Yes. I 100%. Yes.
And I feel like this is, like I said, this is why I love your story, because you had to do this on your own, but what a success story. Because even when you're talking about your suicide attempts, I'm sitting here thinking, how many people really did commit suicide that went through the same thing, that somebody else went, oh, she's nuts, or, oh, she's a crazy homeless person. Like, I think that every day, how many people didn't make it. So I love your story. And so you met your twin flame, and this feels like activation to me.
Yes. Yeah, I do believe it was pure activation on the twin flame realm. And of course, I didn't know how to love or be a partner to anybody in a healthy manner coming out of Stockholm syndrome and this trauma bondage. And so like I codependently latched on, my life depended on him, and, and he dropped me off at the homeless shelter, and I actually was clean, and I worked myself into my first townhouse within a month. I did really, really well. And then I, was obsessed with him. So I started using again to connect with him, and ended up homeless later on. It's an insane story that we probably really don't have the time for tonight.
No, but also it feels like almost a complete, the power of your manifestation shows. In other words, you got yourself into a townhouse, right? Did you mean like you got yourself into a renting and I'm doing this, and then comes the self-sabotage. Now I'm out again. But it's it's 100 lifetimes in one lifetime.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. I'll also say, oh man, I think I just lost it.
That's okay.
Yeah, no.
And I can always pause. If you need a pause, I made you wait for the dog. We can wait for your thought.
No.
Okay. So, all right. So, and now I'm trying to find my place because I'm so excited. But I swear your story it's so resonating, or I kind of want to say it's not resonating. I understand it completely. Like, I just feel like I understand this completely. Okay. So I don't know if that helps out at all.
No, it does. And if I could really quickly, I just want to tell you something that's like absolutely phenomenal about my story.
Great.
That my twin flame and I collided. And then, that's what it was. So when I was staying in a hotel homeless, all of a sudden they were just like, it's telepathy. And I was just like, cause I was bawling my eyes out, wanting to die, like in this psychosis. And they were like, it's telepathy. And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. And, like after that, I was like the homeless person with the headphones in, walking around talking to the voices because they were all clairaudient. They were doing all these things in my brain. They were showing me how telepathy works, how process of elimination works, how they predict what we're going to do throughout our daily routine to keep us on our paths. They like taught me all this really cool stuff. But then they started telling me this narrative of me and my twin flame, the person that abused me, and this girl that he was dating, and how the girl and the person that abused me were going to destroy him and send him to prison because he was dealing drugs at the time.
Okay.
And he ended up in prison. Like all of that came into true fruition. What I didn't know was the girl that he was dating grew up with the person that abused me, and we were 2 counties away. Like nobody knew. Like nobody knows the person that abused me where we live. Like it was just, it's so insane. And then when you hear the story, it's like, how in the world, because I moved across the state when I met my twin flame. So like my abuser and his family and things like that, like they're not supposed to be in this area. Okay. And then the girl that abused him and did all these things to him, and then he went to prison, and the 2 of them grew up together.
Okay, and the person that abused you, was this person older, or was this more collusion, or that's my first question.
This was the person that trapped me and held me at gunpoint when I was 18 and kept me in a Stockholm Syndrome relationship for 10 years.
Wow.
And
okay.
I moved away when I escaped that, and I moved across the state. And that's when I met my twin flame. So it was like, there should have been, we weren't in the same town. We weren't in the same vicinity. We had no relation, no association to the same people. And it still ended up that the girl that he ended up dating and that sabotaged his life before he went to prison. And while he was even in the beginnings of while he was in prison, her and the person that abused me all of those years prior grew up together. And I mean, from childhood.
Okay. And also, so now let's jump to this moment where you're walking and you're sort of like the homeless person talking, which LA is very interesting because we have such a homeless community now. It's ridiculous. But I see that, and I think that I don't like the word crazy, because I think there's something. Now, some people may be on drugs or something. I saw a guy the other day that I'm 100% sure was possessed, and it was very odd. But you're walking down the street and you got your headphones on, say, and you're actually communicating and downloading information and things and how things work, correct?
Yeah, the entire time.
And that's where the turn takes place, because the voices and everything starts to make sense and is true predictions, right?
Yes.
Wow, that's amazing. And you were not on meth? You were on meth at that point?
I was on meth when I started, but then whenever I was homeless and things like that, no, I was clean.
Because it's too scary.
Well, it's not just that, but I couldn't get drugs anymore because I was homeless, and I didn't really know anybody in the area because I hadn't lived there. So my connections were very few. And yeah, I was forced to get clean, and the voices still continued. And then they continued again, even whenever I went back to using after I got on my feet for a while. And then they've just kind of continued ever since. They've subsided a lot, but that's because it's more or less, it's just changed a lot.
Well, you have, I would say, because of what you're doing for your work, which is readings and stuff like that, there's a more of a contract with them. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. That sounds pretty appropriate.
So when someone gets a reading from you, it's because I know I'm a huge Jessica and Oscar fan. When someone gets a reading from you, do you feel like you channel your team, or is it different every time? Their team, is it the same thing?
It can definitely be different every time. A lot of times it'll come out as scripture or poetry. And everybody's a little bit different, especially depending on how I'm reading. Like if I'm doing a Akashic reading or if I'm doing tarot reading, they're definitely different. I know that I can connect to other people's guide teams, but I know sometimes it's just my guide team. And then sometimes it'll be an outside entity like a Lyran or something that wants to send a message through to them.
And you trust all these, or sometimes do you know if it's negative or you just are sort of in trust?
It has been because I went through psychological warfare. Like the voices were really, really, some of the voices were really abusive. Because of the trauma that I'd been through. And it was really hard to depict the difference. And that's where like the schizophrenia and the psychosis and stuff, also came into play. And that's why I understand schizophrenia and how it can send someone over the edge so easily. But I could also feel the voices were outside of my mind. So I knew that they weren't like, I can't tell you how someone that doesn't understand spirituality or doesn't know that they're having a spiritual experience would describe how schizophrenic voices work. But it seems like it would be the same. But since they told me it was telepathy, I knew it was outside of me.
I have I keep getting to do, sometimes I do a podcast alone and I'm trying to get one done. And I have made a friend who is schizophrenic, and he sent me 2 long emails about how it works with him and how his mother came in and didn't want him on medication and didn't want him thinking he was crazy and just did a great job of explaining it to him.
Oh, that's beautiful.
It is. And folks, and the reason he is an artist he's an artist on Instagram. I'm going to hold back on everything because I think I have his permission to say everything, but I'm going to wait and put it all on one episode. He's a great artist. I love what he's doing. I think he should make a tarot deck. But it's, again, when you have someone that comes in and tells you you're not crazy, it's just like this. It's a world of difference.
It really is. I was lucky. Everything that was aligned with me, even when I went looking for a schizophrenic diagnosis so I could just give up and be done, I never received one. I took tests, everything. They were like, nope, PTSD, get out of here. Like multiple doctors. And they told me that I would never receive one because it was not meant for me. And this is what I had to do.
Well, here's from a paranormal point of view also, what I may be wrong and feel free to correct me, but when you're in that state of not knowing, those negative voices, which could be attachments, demonic, negative, there's a whole thing that they could be. This is the hard part of life. They go in when you're weak. If you know the full story about the haunting in Connecticut, they hit the kid that had cancer. Okay, which sounds awfully unfair, but you were sort of at this state of, I don't know. So these negative voices take advantage and you were strong enough to outdo it.
You're spot on. They still try sometimes. And honestly, they told me the reason that they do it is because then I try harder.
Yes.
It's like, it's not, I don't want to call it hard love. What is it? I can't remember how they worded it, that for like a year they screamed it into my head. Oh, I'm making you stronger.
Well, that is I have to go back and find this TikTok that I watched last night because this is sort of a big revelation for me this year, but it goes back with, if you're going to work with angels, you're going to become very attractive to demons. It does not, that span goes both ways. It doesn't go one way. And you kind of have to be aware of that because also the darkness is your teacher. That is your teacher.
Yeah, 100%. And the shaman even told me that I was actually calling those sets of voices in because I got rid of them after the shamanic ritual and they were gone for like 2 months. And then I ended up calling them back in because of the thought pattern that I had implemented for 20 years, the one of no self-worth, the one of lack of motivation, depression, all of the diagnoses, the wanting to give up, the not wanting to, the lethargy, everything that I was for 20 years encompassed, you know what I mean? We say in the 12 steps all the time, like however many years you were an addict, however many years, you were in trauma, that's how many years it's going to take you. Like that's how many years you got to give yourself to get back out of it. And so like, that's kind of where I'm at, is having patience with myself now and understanding. And you're right. It is fear that provokes them. It's fear, the lack of self-worth, like the lack of self-love. It's any crevice or darkness that they see that they can slip into to make the darkness bigger.
You said sets of voices, and I love that because that's the positive and the negative. So this is really bizarre, but I was doing oh my God, there's so much to get to, and we haven't even got to the topic. I was doing a free writing this morning. What is that called? I tell everyone to do it. Free writing. Automatic writing.
Automatic writing.
So I get this message and I immediately go write it down. And I'm like, this is for your first Patreon, but I think this is about you and me. And this is the message. I am the calculation of many micro movements, so that will not change overnight. And, okay, that's it. I thought I had a big finish.
But I feel like that really coincides with, I was watching one of the extra dimensionals on Gaia, and they talk about how schizophrenia and multiple personality disorders is really multiple entities living out multiple timelines in one person.
That makes sense. And I kept thinking exactly when you're talking about these voices coming back or the balance, we are exactly what you're saying. How many years is how many years you have to grow? We are micro movements. That is why we can change our thought process right away, but it doesn't change everything right away. It's like every thought, every movement. I can't think of a better example except that lady that tells you to clean your house, the tidying up lady, she says you should dress nice even when you're home alone, because just looking in the mirror and seeing yourself sloppy is a reinforcement of low self-esteem. Micro movements, people. Okay. So, let me see. Where are we? Oh my God. Tell me, if you can, next section, I want to do the 12 steps, but right now, anything, did I leave any loose ends there? Do you have any story there? I think we're in good shape here. Twin Flame, are you still with him?
Yeah. Actually, he's. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Okay, we may need to save that for next podcast. Okay, so we got to the turn. Let's go. Let's take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the 12 steps. I love this. Okay. Hey, I'm here with my friend Ari that hosts, or I want to say takes care of all my Zoom events, my comedy shows, my classes. Ari, tell everybody what type of Zoom events you are great at hosting.
Yeah, so I really take care of any kind of Zoom event, from a virtual camp to lecture series, cooking classes, celebrations like weddings or bar and bat mitzvahs, really anything.
And to me, it just looks like you make my life easier. I just have to click on and talk, which is beautiful. Tell everybody, what are you doing behind the scenes that helps me so much?
Yeah, so I'm taking care of all of the settings, like muting and spotlighting people, making breakout rooms, recording the meeting, really just all of the tech pieces you might think of or not think of. I'm taking care of that.
That is so helpful. And it really is the difference between something looking amateurish and something looking really professional and wanting people to come back to your meeting again. So tell everybody where they can find you.
Yes, so you're welcome to email me at wharton.ari@gmail.com. That's WHARTON.ARI@gmail.com. And you're welcome to email me with any questions and find out how we can work together.
And your rates are so reasonable, it's crazy. So everybody, wharton.ari@gmail. I'm going to try and have it in the show notes. If you can't find her or you don't know how to rewind the podcast, just email. I'll get you connected. Thanks, Ari.
Thanks, Karen.
Okay, we're back. And before we get to the 12 steps, you were saying that that story about, and now there's a motorcycle, that story about how you were talking about the people in your twin flame, that's like a bigger, has a lot more to it, correct?
There is so much more to it. I'm not quite like, I know it was thrown out there for a reason, but there is so much more to it. So if anybody feels like it's like, well, that was just random to throw in there, I'm not sure what it's symbolizing, but there is so much more that encompasses more than the fact that me and my twin flame were abused by like the same semi-family members, not blood related, but it's a huge compound story of nothing but universal synchronicities. And that's like when I tell my story, it's undeniable of how traumatic, psychological, and absolutely epic, truly epic an awakening can be.
And that's its own book. That's its own book in itself. And you know, this really just before we get to that, are we ever going to get to that? I see a pattern through all of this. I see the pattern through all of this, and I really feel like the intensity of your story is, you know, I'll just put it this way. When people would call me all the time, I would be like, you're a healer. And then at one point I was like, I don't think we need that many healers. And now I'm like, oh my God, we have to change society for the souls that are coming in like you did. And so that even if they don't have the right mom or dad to walk them through this, they don't feel crazy. I think that, does that resonate?
I think that honestly is a perfect opening to the 12 steps of spiritual alchemy, because that's exactly what they are prepared to do for all the future generations.
Oh my God. Okay. Hit us. Let us learn.
Okay. So, 12 steps. There's plenty of fellowships. Everybody hears about them. There's a huge stigma around them. Basically, you got to hit rock bottom to get in the club. Nobody wants to be in the club because they never want to hit rock bottom. They never want to feel like they have that bad of a problem or anything like that. But the reality of it is we all have that bad of a problem with processed foods, with cell phones, with Facebook, with Instagram, with jealousy, with controlling, with chaos, the
with
roller
sugar.
coaster. Yes. And trauma bonds. Trauma bonds are so huge because trauma bonds encompass, once you're trauma bonded, you want to control everything. You're afraid of everything, like all of that stuff. I'm on my 5th round of the 12 steps. And the first time I did them in the parent fellowship, which anonymity is a big thing. So I'm not going to say the fellowships by name necessarily, except for maybe one. But the parent fellowship, I did the round of steps in first because my trauma was so heavy that I couldn't do a workbook. They're the only one that doesn't have a workbook. So a sponsor just takes you through, and it helped me develop this trust to be able to go further in. And then I got the workbook, because the workbook in the next fellowship, which is actually NA, it's the most grueling workbook. I call it Getting Down and Dirty with Your Soul. And it has questions about sex, trauma, all of those things. And basically you just divulge everything out. And like, it's literally like, you know how Amy Spicer can pull that toxicity and that black energy out?
Yeah.
It's literally like you are voluntarily throwing it all up, answering these questions.
Wow.
It's pretty amazing. It's pretty brutal. But at the same time, you have someone that walks you through, and someone that is compassionate and empathetic. And you have this huge support system, which is what I'm working to build with people in the collective. And I've now transformed the steps into, so step 1 would be, we admitted we were powerless over our unconscious, and that it could or already has led our lives to become unmanageable on any measurable level. Because everybody thinks, thank you. Everybody thinks unmanageability is, it is the chaos. We all live in some layer of chaos. It doesn't matter if, yours is deeper than mine or whatever it is. And if you're looking at it that way, then you definitely need to work them, because there should be no judgment. There should literally just be like the peace, the love, the light, and all of that. And we are still quite a ways away from that. So I'll just do a rundown real quick. I read step 1. The second would be, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3 is, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So whatever anybody's like, you grow it. Agnostics, atheists, they all have worked 12 steps, and they've formed and created their own higher power. You have that liberty. This is not a religion. It's a spiritual aspect. And it's so beautiful. 4 is the scariest thing that you will ever do, but it's the most freeing. When I read it to my mom, she was like, I don't know if I could do that. Because it sounds
and I'm going to send you back to 3 for one thing, because you were talking about the higher power. The higher power could be your guides, which I don't think anyone here has, and that listens to my podcast would question your guides, or the flow, correct?
Yes. Or even your higher self. Like, it can literally be, I've seen people do nature. I've seen people, like, it's just honestly it's something outside of yourself that you believe in.
Right. Okay. And 4.
Okay. So 4 is, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And that's whenever we get down and dirty, like super hard with, you write 3 columns out and you say, I resent this person because of this, and it affects my this. And you look at your part in it, like your side, because you can only clean your side of the street. A lot of people say step 4 and out the door, because that's when they leave, because they're too afraid to face themselves. 5 is we admit it to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrong, which is where you read step 4 to your sponsor or your guide.
Okay, and 6, that's an important one that you said. I want you to repeat this again, because this is very interesting. It has to be outside yourself because...
because the words are spiritual alchemy. Well, everything is spiritual alchemy, but words, when they're spoken out loud, become the power. And then not just that, but the biggest thing that we have is secrets make you sick. If you are afraid to say something out loud, whether it's wrong or it's right, it's going to make you sick. You're going to bury it, and it's going to grow, and it's going to, and it's going to grow in your shadow. If you can sit there and say, hey, I'm jealous of this girl because she's prettier than me, or hey, I'm still damaged because my boyfriend cheated on me and this girl, and it makes me feel sexually inadequate. You know what I mean? Like, that's where we look at our side of the street. Like, okay, my boyfriend cheated. I resent my boyfriend because he cheated on me, and it makes me feel sexually inadequate, makes me feel unattractive. Like, that's my side of the street that I'm cleaning, not his.
And that's a very interesting thing, and probably why, like, I'm a comedian and Jess is a comedian, and we're in this because a lot of comedy is about putting your shame out there.
Yes.
I'll never forget, there's a comic, a very funny guy, and his name is Ian Bagg. And one day I'm watching him work, and he just stops his show and he goes, hey, who here has shit your pants? Which is like, I'm like, what kind of comedy? I don't get. And everybody's dying laughing. And then I realized he just took the shame out of that for every person in the room that had that happen. By saying that out loud and just like, whatever, that's what I do. Or I don't remember, the tag was like, I've been to Taco Bell, whatever it was, which I love Taco Bell. Sorry. But it's taking the shame out. That's what comedians do, hopefully.
And well, I agree. And I think that they do all of society and the collective a favor in doing that. And not to take anything away from that when I say this, the biggest thing of what these offer is the ability to take it and admit it without the comedy, in a sense, I guess, and still, like, because even you saying that, like, I have IBS, I have, you know what I mean? But even still, like, admitting something like that is still terrifying to me. But I can guarantee you, I've told my sponsor and my guide that.
Right.
So I guess it's a different end of the spectrum, because there's certain things that I definitely deal with comedy, but then there's other ends of the spectrum that I'm too afraid to say at all, even in a comedic fashion.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm actually working on those right now. But yeah, it doesn't cure it and it doesn't make fun of it, but it makes you go, oh, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. Yeah.
I just think that you and Jessa and people like that are just so brave, because it's still like, I don't know if I could divulge it like that. You know what I mean? But it does. It gives every single person the freedom to truly embrace themselves and rid themselves of the shame. And like, I always think of Jessa's story with the meth pee, and yeah. I idolize it in a way, because it brings so much like bravery, like famous bravery sense. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And just as a comedian, it's a brilliant piece of work. The writing is brilliant.
Yes, 100%. I guess what I'm saying is that the 12 give it more of a softer approach, to where you don't have, like, you can still divulge it, but you don't have to do it necessarily
at open mic night. No, you don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. For the people that are too afraid and have stage fright, you know what I mean? Like me.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
Like that. This is perfect. Okay. So 6, I think, is where I left off, is we're entirely ready to have God remove all of these imbalances of character. Now, for most 12, it says these defects of character, but a lot of people really, really think that word is harsh in the collective and in society. So I've adjusted it to imbalances, because what we're really working on is balance. We understand that no part of us is bad. No part of us, you know what I mean? Like, even the shadow part, it serves a purpose. So I feel like imbalance does it a justice. 7 is we humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. And 8, okay, I don't really want to backtrack, but 8 is made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9 is made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure ourselves, them, or others. 10 is continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11 is thought through prayer and meditation, our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. And 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. Doing the steps, you have multiple spiritual awakenings, and they're endless. The thing with the spiritual alchemy, though, is that so when you invoke these as spiritual alchemy, you cannot stop in the middle. Mm-hmm. If you stop in the middle, you become stagnant and you regress, and you are going to hit rock bottom on whatever it is that you were trying to focus them on. So if you're trying to focus them on relieving control and releasing control or perfection or something like that, and say you stop on step 3 and you're like, oh, I feel so much, because people start to feel better. They start every step they do. They're like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm cured. And they will walk away. And then as soon as they walk away, it's kind of like, wait a minute. You were on the right path. Let me show you what happens when you walk off the cliff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, it's you get a psychic upgrade.
Yes, 100%. Everything, like every time that I've done a round of steps, I have awoken, and I've experienced I can't even begin to explain all of the spiritual awakenings, the psychic experiences that I've had, the channeling, everything that I have gotten to harness due to the foundation of these steps. But not just that, but my healing road, Karen, has been phenomenal with these steps. Mm-hmm. I have gone through multiple trauma therapies plus shamanic journeys and things like that. And as I did these steps, I was led to each step in the psychological realm as well. So like they always say in healing, to have a good foundation, 50-50 of spirituality and psychological, I can't say it, psychological, tongue-tied. And otherwise you like Pollyanna somebody, you think you're too smart mentally, or you think you're on a pedestal spiritually. So the balance is really, really pertinent. But the alchemy in this, it is scary. And it is. And when I think about it, it's like, man, I really hate to tell people that if like they commit to this, they have to follow it through, because otherwise they're going to hit a rock bottom. They're going to try and control something and it's going to blow up in their face or something like that. But steps 1, 2, and 3 form that foundation. And not just that, but this number 12 is so prominent. And I've seen where, and I've been working out and I've been shown where it aligns with the 12 zodiacs. It aligns with the 12 houses. It aligns with the flower of life and sacred geometry. It aligns with the 12 strains of GNA, the chakras, the 12 Akashic libraries.
And I'm sorry, repeat the 12 steps again. The 12
okay. So, yes. The first one is we admitted we were powerless over our unconscious.
Or just number 12. I'm sorry.
So number 12 is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. We try to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs, which would then technically be going into the 13th dimension where you become a creator of consciousness. So 12 is basically giving back what is so freely given to you. If you work the 12 steps, then basically you get to walk someone else through them.
Got it. That is amazing, though, how it does relate to everything numerologically, like even the zodiac signs and stuff like that. I did not ever make that connection. That's pretty fascinating.
Well, and they align really well on a face-to-face manner, but also paradoxically, like step 1 is powerlessness and unmanageability. What do you think an Aries is? And I can say that all day because I'm an Aries.
Yes, exactly. Okay.
So, and I was looking them up before our thing, like Taurus, they all align perfectly with, each step. So it's pretty awesome the more and more you get to break it down.
Wow. So it's almost like the bad qualities of the astrological sign fits the step.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And then the other really cool thing about it is if you've never looked up the history as to how AA was formed, it is completely divine intervention and through, collective consciousness, like basically guides and, God, source, whatever anybody's, verbiage of what they believe in, brought these two individuals together and then compounded on. And if you ever walked into a 12-step room or fellowship, the community that they have is the community that we all talk about aspiring to build.
There's so much with that last statement, and I just feel like I've crossed over. Well, anyways, this is what I want to say. I think you're so onto something here that I wonder if you not only line up the steps with the sign, but see where that sign is in your birth chart, if that can help you.
I think that you are 100% onto something. I think the 12 are unlimited and they're infinite. And the coolest thing about it is when you're focusing on, so if you want to give up control and you're a control freak and that's what you focus them on. But then also, if you think about the good things that you want to uncover, like what you just said, and you make that, it manifests through working the steps. You don't just do the healing, you manifest. This is the most powerful manifestation. I've gone from being homeless to buying a house in 2 years.
Fantastic.
I've gone from that 58 on the PTSD scale to a 16. I have done things that I would have never thought possible, that other people would have never thought possible. And I just keep manifesting and I keep getting to where I want to be and I keep healing. And it's just like Justice says, everybody needs to do a round of steps at least once every 5 years, or as they see fit. For me, someone that has had compounded trauma, I did the first 2 on addiction. And then I did the second one on control because I had my abandonment wound. And so I wanted to control every single person that was in my life. I didn't want them to leave me. I was terrified. So I had to relinquish that control. And then the fourth time I did it to chaos because the trauma bonding had me in that chaotic. I was seeking chaos, the dopamine levels, all of that stuff. And then the round that I'm on now is focused on fear. Because of the PTSD running my life, I was terrified that it would never go away, things like that. So, and I'm currently on step 10 in that round. And then what I'll do is I'll probably actually wait until Aries season comes around again, because I'm going to align each step with each month of the zodiac and do in that.
Have you thought of a Patreon? Do you have a Patreon?
I haven't yet. I don't I'm sure now that you've mentioned it, it's probably that's probably a nudge and a kick in the butt. I haven't. It's just I'm met with such resistance that sometimes I get tired of talking about the 12 because people are so resistant to it. They're like, no, it doesn't work for you. Or you'll have people that have been in the 12-step rooms and they walk away. And it's when you it's not a cult, but when you walk away, it becomes a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. If you walk into the rooms, people will tell you that normal people need a program like us. It's literally like addicts and alcoholics and, sexaholics and gamblers. They go from being the low on the totem pole. And I'm not trying to say it's a hierarchy, but they actually rise above, a lot of the normal society because
self-exploration.
Well, that and the gift of discernment becomes real. The ego checking becomes real. So you can tell when someone that doesn't work a program is a control freak and manipulating a situation. You can see that. You can read that. Your energy, just everything that you do consciously expands.
Well, here would be the interesting thing, because also I think people hear 12 steps and they go, I got to quit drinking. And that's not what you're talking about.
No, it's not. The thing is, though, too, is that it will require you. So I have actually someone in the community that was using weed, and she does shamanic trading. So weed is part of that whenever she does her rituals and things like that. But she was also using it for not recreational, but for outside coping mechanism. Yeah. So when she got to step 2, she actually had to put it down and surrender it. The thing is, though, is that she surrendered it and was able to pick it back up about a month later in the highest vibration and no longer use it for a coping mechanism and only use it for the highest good. So if it's something that you want, if it's basically you're asked to put things down, but if it truly belongs to you, it will come back to you.
Excellent. Excellent. Oh my God. Okay. So Marie, tell everyone, I've got your website in the show notes, Marie Spiroff.
Yep. Yes.
Spelled correctly. And tell everyone your services, what you offer. Let them know.
Sure. Thank you. Yes, I offer the 12 to anybody that wants to work them on any layer. I do usually a couple times a year, I do a quick 12-week class. The next one will be after the new year, focusing on fear. So it's just a shotgun course so people can get a feel for it and like really decide if they want to work the actual workbook that's been made up. And it's always free. It's an energy exchange. It's the purest form of it. Because as I teach or I guide, I learn, and vice versa. That's why being a sponsor or a guide is so pertinent and absolutely beautiful. And then on top of the other services that I offer are intuitive channeled reading, tarot, oracle reading, and then I also do Akashic record reading. And it's not on my website yet, but I do Gene Key intuitive channel, and I'm working on past life regression. So those should be up after the first of the year as options.
Fantastic.
I do channeled poetry and channel poetry. Thank you. Sorry.
You know, it's so interesting because Jessica Gillis and I, we just had this immediate friendship, and we were both saying how we've seen each other vulnerable in our most vulnerable state and our strongest state. And it's just such a beautiful friendship. I have to stop telling her business on my podcast, but she's so cool. I just think this is fantastic. Marie, first of all, thank you for your patience. Like I said, 100 emails back and forth, and we finally made it. And I love this podcast.
I do too. And I'm really excited to be on it. And I was telling my mom, I was like, she's like the Joe Rogan of spiritual podcasts.
I love it. You know what? A year ago, I would have been like, what? And now this year, I'm like, that is awesomest compliment ever.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I wasn't sure because I know how some people are indifferent.
No. It's amazing how much of my life has changed this year. My attitude, who I watch, what I think, and the amount of judgment that's been pulled out of everything is just wonderful. But thank you so much. Let me know when you start that fear one again, or when you start one of these, and I'll make an announcement so people can, hopefully they'll go to your website and sign up for a reading or your email list or whatever you got going on. But I truly appreciate your time.
Oh, and also, if you don't care, real quick, I do want to say that if anybody does want to book an intuitive channel, if you use the promo code whenever you book karenrontowski rocks, then I'll knock $10 off to equal the 12 instead of the 13.
Thank you. I love that.
Thank you, Karen. It's been awesome.
Thank you, dear Marie. Everybody, thanks. We will see you next week. Thanks to Mike at Uno Rising Media, and sign up for my Patreon and then send those vibes to Marie to start her Patreon. Bye, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.